In the small town of San Remigio, Cebu province in the Philippines, the Central Public School was facing an unprecedented crisis. For 4 months, the 32 teachers of the institution had not received their salaries due to bureaucratic complications and problems in the municipal budget. The once vibrant school corridors now echoed with worried whispers and tired looks, as dedicated educators continued teaching despite the financial difficulties they faced in their personal lives. Maria Alvarez, a 55-year-old mathematics teacher, had been the pillar of the institution for more than 3 decades, educating generations of Filipino students with her knowledge and unwavering dedication. Even with 3 children to support and bills piling up on her table, Maria could not abandon her students, many of whom came from poor families in neighboring villages and relied on education as their only hope for a better future. Each morning, she walked 5 kilometers to school, saving transportation money to buy rice and fish for her family. The other teachers found themselves in similar situations, selling personal belongings, doing extra work on weekends, and taking out loans to survive. Principal Eduardo Santos had knocked on every possible door, sent countless official letters to regional and national authorities, but the answers were always the same. We are working on the problem. The budget situation is complex. Have patience. Patience, however, did not feed families or pay overdue rent. On a particularly difficult morning, a teacher fainted during class due to poor nutrition and accumulated stress, an incident that left the entire school community in a state of shock. That same day, several students' parents gathered to donate food to the teachers, a touching gesture that demonstrated recognition for the sacrifice of those educators. Even with scarce resources, families shared what little they had: fruits from their yards, fish from artisanal fishing, vegetables from their small gardens, creating improvised basic food baskets that were delivered with tears in their eyes and heavy hearts. Meanwhile, kilometers away in the bustling Manila, capital of the Philippines, Manny Pacquiao was flipping through a local newspaper during his breakfast when a small note about unpaid teachers in Cebu province caught his attention. The boxer, who had grown up in extreme poverty before becoming a global sports icon and later entering Filipino politics as a senator, felt something awaken in his chest. Without imagining the impact his next decision would cause, Manny made a call to his assistant, asking for more information about the situation of those teachers forgotten by the system. The story of the San Remigio teachers quickly became a priority for Manny Pacquiao. After receiving a detailed report on the situation, the former boxer was deeply touched to learn that, despite the terrible circumstances, none of the educators had abandoned the school or the students. Raised in conditions of extreme poverty, Manny knew well the value of dedicated teachers, vividly remembering how his own educators had been fundamental in his formation, even when he sold cigarettes on the streets to help support his family. Without fanfare or public announcements, Pacquiao decided to travel personally to Cebu, opting for a common commercial flight instead of his private jet. Wearing simple clothes, jeans, a white t-shirt, and a cap that partially concealed his world-famous face, he departed with only 2 trusted assistants, determined to learn the reality of that school without the fanfare that normally accompanied his public appearances. For him, this was not about publicity or political gain, but a genuine connection with his personal mission to give back to Filipino communities the support he had always received. During the flight, Manny reviewed the files of each of the 32 teachers, reading their stories, learning their names and families, mentally calculating how much would be needed not only to cover the back wages, but to provide some additional financial security to those people who kept education alive despite all adversities. In his heart, a deep admiration grew for those anonymous educators who, without the spotlight of fame or the financial rewards of success, demonstrated a resilience that he considered more valuable than any world champion belt. Upon landing at Cebu Airport, Manny rented a common car and headed to San Remigio, observing through the windows the familiar landscape of his homeland. The crystal-clear water beaches, the verdant mountains, the simple wooden houses on stilts, the barefoot children playing on dirt roads. In each Filipino face he saw along the way, Manny saw a bit of his own story, his own struggles, and felt growing certainty that his decision was not only correct, but necessary and urgent. Arriving in the small town late in the afternoon, He checked into a modest inn, where no one recognized the man who had once adorned billboards, magazines, and television broadcasts around the world. Lying on the simple bed, looking at the ceiling fan that slowly rotated combating the tropical heat, Manny carefully planned his approach for the next day. He didn't want to appear as a savior or create a media spectacle, but rather demonstrate genuine respect for those teachers and offer help in a way that preserved their dignity and highlighted their invaluable worth to Filipino society. The next morning brought an intense blue sky over San Remigio, with a tropical sun illuminating the vibrant colors of the hibiscus flowers and bougainvillea that decorated the path to the Central Public School. Manny Pacquiao woke up early, as he had done since his rigorous training days, and walked slowly through the city streets observing local life awakening. Fishermen returning with their dawn catches, vendors organizing fresh fruits in improvised stalls, uniformed children following in small groups toward school. No one seemed to notice the boxing legend among them, allowing Manny to absorb the authenticity of that place without the interference of fame. Upon reaching the school gates, a simple concrete building painted light blue, with a small courtyard where children played before classes started, Manny felt a tightness in his chest. The modest structure, with windowless openings protected only by metal grates, old fans hanging from the ceiling, and desks worn from use, dramatically contrasted with the luxurious training centers and arenas where he had built his career. Even so, there was a special energy there. The sound of children's laughter, the enthusiasm of students sharing stories, the visible dedication on the tired but determined faces of the teachers arriving carrying books and materials, many visibly worn down by the precarious financial situation. Manny discreetly headed to the office of Principal Eduardo Santos, a 60-year-old man whose graying hair and old-fashioned glasses framed a face marked by time and constant worry. When Pacquiao introduced himself, removing his cap and revealing his identity, the principal initially thought it was a joke or a hallucination caused by stress. The presence of the legendary boxer in his small room with worn furniture and a noisy fan seemed completely surreal, as if a character had jumped from newspaper headlines directly into that forgotten corner of the Philippines. For an hour, Manny listened attentively as the principal explained in detail the school's situation. Delays in government fund transfers, frustrated attempts to resolve the situation through official channels, the personal stories of each teacher, and the sacrifices they made daily to continue educating the community's children. Eduardo showed piles of official letters sent, unanswered emails, detailed reports on the impact of missed payments, all meticulously documented in organized folders that reflected his persistent hope that someday someone would pay attention to that injustice. With teary eyes, not of pity but of deep admiration, Manny shared his intention to help not only financially, but also by using his influence to pressure authorities to permanently resolve the structural problem. The principal, initially reluctant to accept what seemed like charity, was gradually convinced of the sincerity of Pacquiao's intentions, especially when the former boxer explained how his own life had been transformed by teachers who believed in him when he was just a poor boy dreaming of a better future. That conversation, marked by honesty and mutual respect, established the foundation for what would happen next. That same afternoon, Principal Eduardo convened an extraordinary meeting with all the teachers in the school's small auditorium, a space normally used for student presentations and community festivities. Without revealing the true reason for the meeting, he only mentioned that there was possibly positive news to share. The educators arrived gradually after classes ended, carrying the weight of exhaustion after another day of dedicated work despite personal difficulties. Sitting in worn plastic chairs, they talked in low voices about pending bills, accumulated loans, and survival strategies for the coming days, while waiting for the meeting to begin with a mixture of skepticism and faint hope. When Manny Pacquiao discreetly entered through the side door of the auditorium, accompanied by Principal Eduardo, absolute silence took over the environment, followed by expressions of shock, contained sighs, and confused looks exchanged between the teachers. The presence of the Philippines' greatest sports celebrity in that modest inland school seemed as unlikely as snowfall in the archipelago's tropical climate. Some younger teachers instinctively reached for their cell phones to record the moment, but quickly put them away upon noticing the solemn and respectful atmosphere that was established when Manny walked to the center of the small improvised stage. For 20 minutes, Pacquiao spoke with humility and sincerity about his own educational journey, about how teachers had shaped his worldview even in the most difficult moments of his childhood, and about how he considered education the true engine of social transformation in the Philippines. Without grandeur or political rhetoric, he explained that he had learned about the situation at that school through a small newspaper note and felt an immediate connection to those educators' struggle. His eyes, which had faced the most fearsome opponents in boxing rings around the world, now filled with genuine tears as he publicly recognized the silent heroism of those men and women who continued educating children even without receiving their salaries. Then, in a gesture that left everyone astonished, Manny opened a folder and announced his decision. He would not only personally pay all the back salaries of the 32 teachers, but would also guarantee an additional bonus equivalent to 3 months' salary for each one, in recognition of the extraordinary dedication demonstrated. Furthermore, he committed to creating an emergency fund for the school, administered by an independent committee, which could be accessed in similar situations in the future, ensuring that educators would never again be left helpless by administrative failures or bureaucratic delays. The total investment amount, which represented a considerable fraction even for someone with Pacquiao's wealth, would be transferred immediately, without any condition or publicity requirement. The initial reaction was one of absolute disbelief, as if it were just a collective dream born of shared desperation over months. Maria Alvarez, the veteran mathematics teacher, remained motionless in her chair, with silent tears streaming down her cheeks marked by time and constant worry. Other younger teachers covered their faces with their hands, trying to process the magnitude of that moment that instantly transformed their devastated financial realities. A physical education teacher, known for his always strong and animated posture with students despite personal difficulties, fell to his knees in the central aisle of the auditorium, overwhelmed by the emotion of seeing his sacrifices not only recognized, but valued so powerfully by someone who represented the pinnacle of Filipino success on the world stage. What happened next transcended any reaction Manny could have anticipated. Without coordinating or planning, the teachers rose simultaneously and began singing the Filipino national anthem, Lupong Hinirang, their voices initially trembling with emotion gradually gaining strength and harmony. It was a spontaneous demonstration not only of gratitude, but of deep patriotic love and recognition that that moment represented the highest values of Filipino culture: solidarity, resilience, and the unwavering belief in education as a path to a better future. Manny, visibly moved, placed his hand on his chest and joined in the singing, his powerful world champion voice mixing with those of the educators in a moment of human equality that transcended social positions, fame, or wealth. At the end of the anthem, Maria Alvarez, gathering all her courage and dignity, walked to the stage and, representing her colleagues, expressed not only gratitude for the financial support, but a deeper recognition for the respect shown. In her emotional words, conveyed without needing to raise her voice in the respectful silence that dominated the auditorium, she highlighted how Pacquiao's gesture went far beyond money. It was a validation of the value of education and teachers' sacrifice in a society that frequently relegated them to oblivion. That moment was not about charity, but about justice and recognition of the fundamental role of educators in building a stronger nation. Contrary to his initial intention to keep the gesture confidential, Manny understood at that moment that the story needed to be shared not as self-promotion, but as a call to national awareness about the situation of educators. With the teacher's consent, he allowed the news to be released, with the condition that the focus remain on the extraordinary dedication of those professionals and the urgent need for reforms in the Filipino educational system, not on his own act of generosity. The goal was not to glorify the donor, but to illuminate the cause and inspire similar actions throughout the country. Before leaving the school that afternoon, Manny made a point of meeting each teacher individually, listening to their personal stories, learning the names of their children, understanding their dreams and aspirations beyond the classroom. He discovered teachers who, despite delayed salaries, bought school supplies out of their own pockets for needy students, educators who traveled long distances on foot daily to save transportation money, masters who offered free extra classes on weekends for struggling students. Each story reinforced his conviction that he was in the presence of true national heroes, whose greatness manifested not in spectacular moments under spotlights, but in silent persistence in the face of everyday adversities. At the end of that transformative day, as the tropical sun set, tinting the Filipino sky with shades of orange and red, Manny Pacquiao left the San Remigio Central Public School with the certainty that, among all the world titles won in his extraordinary career, few experiences had been as meaningful as that meeting with the resilient educators of a small coastal town. Already inside the car that would take him back to Cebu, he looked out the window and saw the teachers gathered in the schoolyard, many still crying, others hugging, all emanating a renewed energy that he knew would be transmitted to hundreds of children in the following days. At that moment, he felt that he had gained much more than he had given. The news about Manny Pacquiao's gesture spread like wildfire throughout the Philippines. In less than 24 hours, television channels, newspapers, radios, and digital platforms echoed the story of the San Remigio teachers and the legendary boxer's intervention. The images of the emotional educators, captured by cell phones during the meeting in the auditorium, went viral on social media, generating a wave of national commotion. Unlike other stories of celebrities making donations, this one touched on an especially sensitive point of Filipino identity: respect for teachers as fundamental pillars of society and collective indignation at the neglect they faced. The impact of the story was amplified when teachers from other regions of the country began to share their own similar experiences, revealing a systemic problem much broader than imagined. In Manila, hundreds of educators spontaneously gathered in front of the Department of Education, holding signs with phrases like, "We all deserve a Pacquiao," and "Value those who educate your nation." The mobilization, completely peaceful and marked by cultural manifestations such as traditional songs and poetry, attracted the attention of international media, transforming a local issue into a debate of global relevance about the treatment given to educators in developing countries. Pressured by public opinion and the growing movement of support for teachers, government authorities finally acted. The Minister of Education announced the creation of a special task force to investigate delays in salary payments across the country and implement a contingency system that would ensure educators never went without pay, regardless of bureaucratic obstacles. Parliamentarians from different parties, including Pacquiao's political adversaries, united in a rare demonstration of consensus to approve under urgent procedures legislation that established penalties for public administrators responsible for delays in the payment of education professionals. In San Remigio, the lives of the 32 teachers were completely transformed. With the back pay and additional bonuses, many were able to settle accumulated debts during the months of crisis, recover pawned goods, resume postponed medical treatments, and provide small luxuries long denied to their children. Maria Alvarez, after 3 decades dedicated to teaching mathematics, finally managed to buy the computer she had dreamed of to create digital teaching materials adapted to the reality of her students. A young science teacher used part of his bonus to acquire simple equipment to assemble the school's first scientific laboratory, transforming theoretical classes into practical experiences that amazed the students. Beyond the material changes, something deeper and more significant happened in that school community: the rescue of professional dignity and pride in being an educator. The teachers, previously downcast and embarrassed for not being able to honor financial commitments, now walked with their heads held high through the city streets, receiving respectful greetings and gestures of admiration from local residents. Students who previously did not fully understand the sacrifice of their masters began to demonstrate greater respect and dedication to studies, inspired by the story of resistance and the validation symbolized by Pacquiao's gesture. The school, previously marked by an environment of anxiety and uncertainty, flourished with a renewed energy of hope and possibilities. A week after his visit to San Remigio, Manny Pacquiao used his political influence as a senator to convene a special hearing in the Filipino Senate dedicated exclusively to the salary issue of public school teachers. Unlike his usual pronouncements, this time Pacquiao was not alone in the plenary. By his side, seated in places normally occupied by advisors and specialists, were Maria Alvarez and 3 other teachers from the Central Public School, invited to share their first-hand experiences with the nation's legislators. The presence of those inland educators, dressed in their best clothes yet still simple, contrasting with the impeccable suits of the politicians, created a powerful image that would dominate the headlines the next day. For almost 3 hours, the senators heard emotional accounts about the reality of public schools in the most remote regions of the country. Not only the financial difficulties caused by salary delays, but also the lack of basic infrastructure, the scarcity of teaching materials, the overcrowded classrooms, and the physical and emotional wear on education professionals. Maria, with the natural eloquence of someone who spent her life transmitting knowledge, explained how the systematic devaluation of teachers represented not only a labor injustice, but a fundamental obstacle to the country's development, driving young talents away from the teaching career and harming the quality of education offered to new generations of Filipinos. At the end of the hearing, in a moment that would enter the political history of the Philippines, Manny Pacquiao announced the creation of the Educators of the Future Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring emergency support for teachers in similar situations and developing teacher appreciation programs throughout the country. Committing to donate a significant portion of his personal fortune and to use his international network of contacts to raise additional resources, the former boxer transformed his individual gesture into a structured long-term initiative. The foundation's first project would be the construction of subsidized housing for teachers in rural areas, a particularly acute problem mentioned during the Senate testimonies. Pacquiao's initiative inspired a chain of solidarity that crossed borders. Filipino businessmen at home and abroad began to adopt schools in their regions of origin, ensuring emergency funds to prevent teachers from going without salaries in similar situations. International organizations focused on education turned their eyes to the Philippines, offering partnerships, training programs, and technological resources. Even other athletes and celebrities from different countries, inspired by Manny's attitude, initiated similar movements in their own communities, creating a global network of support for teacher appreciation. In San Remigio, the school was experiencing a transformation that went far beyond the financial issue. Enrollments for the next school year doubled, with families from neighboring communities wishing to enroll their children in the institution that had become a national symbol of educational resilience. Community volunteers organized collective efforts to improve the school's physical infrastructure, painting walls, fixing furniture, installing new fans, creating gardens and social spaces. Local companies began to offer paid internships for outstanding students, creating concrete bridges between school education and future work opportunities and professional development. The teachers, in turn, felt not only financially relieved, but professionally reinvigorated. They organized into study groups to share pedagogical techniques, created innovative interdisciplinary projects, and established a mentoring program to support educators early in their careers. The public recognition of their value, symbolized by Pacquiao's gesture and amplified by the national response, translated into renewed creative energy and even greater dedication to student learning. The school that a few months ago faced an existential crisis was now transforming into a laboratory of innovative educational practices, receiving frequent visits from educators from other regions interested in replicating its resurgence experience. 6 months after that transformative afternoon in the auditorium of the San Remigio Central Public School, Manny Pacquiao returned to the city, this time not discreetly, but as the guest of honor for the inauguration of the new technological training center annexed to the school. The space, funded by the newly created Educators of the Future Foundation, featured a complete computer lab, digital library, video conference room, and equipment for professional courses, transforming the small rural school into a regional educational hub. Hundreds of people gathered for the event, including educational authorities, government representatives, national press, and, mainly, local residents who saw materializing a change they had never imagined possible for their community. During the ceremony, held in the schoolyard decorated with tropical flowers and colorful banners prepared by the students, the most emotional moment was not the cutting of the inaugural ribbon nor the official speeches, but the surprise presentation organized by the students. 50 children and teenagers, dressed in impeccably pressed uniforms and faces radiant with pride, formed a choir to perform an original song composed especially for the occasion. The lyrics, collaboratively written in literature classes, celebrated not only Pacquiao's generosity, but mainly the tireless dedication of their teachers, described as silent warriors who build the future with chalk, words, and infinite love. Maria Alvarez, now the school's pedagogical coordinator and a member of the Foundation's advisory board, observed the scene with tearful eyes, reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past few months. In her hands she held a special book, a collection of personal accounts written by each of the 32 teachers, narrating their experiences during the crisis and the subsequent transformation, which would be given to Manny as a symbol of gratitude. More than a simple thank you, that volume represented a historical document, a human testimony to the importance of teacher appreciation and the impact that a single gesture of recognition can have when directed at those who dedicate their lives to educating. In the closing speech, Manny Pacquiao surprised everyone by announcing that the experience with the San Remigio teachers had profoundly changed his life priorities and future plans. The legendary boxer and politician revealed that he was redirecting the focus of his career to the educational area, committing to use his global platform to advocate for the appreciation of educators not only in the Philippines, but internationally. The Educators of the Future Foundation, initially created as a response to a specific situation, was now transforming into the main project of his postering life, with expanding programs to other provinces and ambitious plans for the following years, including scholarships for teachers' children and international exchange programs. At the end of the ceremony, while informally conversing with teachers, students, and family members in the schoolyard, Manny was approached by a boy of approximately 10 years old, son of a local fisherman, who timidly handed him a drawing. The simple illustration, made with colored pencils on a notebook sheet, showed Pacquiao not with boxing gloves or informal senator attire, but alongside teachers in a classroom, all wearing superhero capes. The boy explained, in a voice almost inaudible, it was so low, that he wanted to be a teacher when he grew up, inspired by the story he had witnessed in his community. That intimate moment, away from the spotlights and cameras that had recorded the official event, represented the true legacy of Manny's intervention, the seed planted in new generations about the invaluable worth of education and those who dedicate their lives to it. The next morning, as the plane took off from Cebu Airport taking Manny back to Manila, the former boxer looked out the window at the Philippines landscape unfolding below. The verdant islands surrounded by the crystal blue sea, the coastal communities with their colorful houses, the meticulously cultivated agricultural fields, the majestic volcanoes in the background. In each piece of that land he loved so much, he saw the invisible but fundamental work of thousands of educators shaping the nation's future child by child, class by class, day by day. Of all the accurate punches he had delivered in his legendary career in the rings, Manny Pacquiao now understood that his most lasting impact might be the one that began on an ordinary afternoon in a small San Remigio school, when he decided not only to pay back wages, but to restore dignity to those who dedicated their lives to illuminating minds and hearts. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.